The internet is buzzing tonight because Ray J has decided to light a match in a room already full of gasoline. Out of nowhere, Brandy's little brother jumps online and starts talking about Beyoncé and Jay-Z acting funny on the Boy Is Mine tour. Showing up to multiple shows, smiling for the cameras, taking pictures with everybody except Brandy. According to Ray J, it's not just a simple scheduling thing or a missed hello. He's hinting that something deeper, something older, is keeping Beyoncé and Brandy from even sharing the same frame. And fans are already stitching the pieces together in real time. Clips of Beyoncé allegedly dodging Brandy backstage are flying across social media. Old interviews, shady quotes, and those long-buried late 90s rumors about Jay-Z and Brandy talking are suddenly back on the timeline like they never left. Some people say Ray J is just being messy again. Others think he finally said what Brandy never would. Is this just a protective brother stirring the pot? Or is he quietly confirming that there's a reason Beyoncé keeps her distance? Tonight, we're breaking down the claims, the history, and why this one rant has both fan bases on edge. When Ray J hit that live button, it didn't look like anything special at first. He was in a hoodie, sitting in the back of a car, city lights blurring past the window. People thought it was just another one of his late-night rants. But then he took a breath, looked straight into the camera, and said there was something going on at the Boy Is Mine tour that nobody wanted to talk about. He said he was tired of watching it, tired of pretending not to see it. His voice was shaky, but he kept going anyway, and that was the moment the whole situation shifted from stan gossip to something bigger. He started slow, talking about how proud he was of his sister, about how long Brandy had been working, how many years she had poured into her craft. He talked about how hard she trained for the tour, how much pressure she put on herself to make this run perfect. Then he slid into the part that made everybody sit up. He said there were certain people, huge people, who had shown up to multiple dates, smiling, clapping, showing love to everyone on stage, but never once coming by to say hello to the woman whose name was on the poster. He didn't say any names at first. He called them the biggest couple in the world, the king and queen, the ones everybody worships. The comments were already guessing. People were spamming honeybee emojis, music note emojis, blue hearts. Ray J watched the chat for a second, smirked, and then he finally said it out loud. He mentioned how Beyoncé and Jay had been at several shows, how they came to support Kelly, how they posed with the dancers, the band, Monica, even the staff. And then he asked why out of everyone, they still hadn't taken a single picture with Brandy. According to him, it wasn't an honest mistake. He said the family knew when certain guests were in the building. He said Brandy's people got updates, security adjusted routes, cameras got ready, and yet every time, Beyoncé's team would glide past their hallway, walk right by Brandy's dressing room, and suddenly disappear into a private area. He described it almost like a dance, like everyone knew their steps, like it had been choreographed. He insisted that Brandy never complained, that she kept her head down, did her vocal warm-ups, and focused on the show, but he said it was eating at him. "We grew up loving these people," he told the viewers. "We studied their music. We learned from how they moved. So when they come through, when they show up again and again, and my sister still never gets a simple 'have a good show,' it feels weird. It feels personal." He wasn't yelling. That made it worse. He sounded like someone who had been holding this in for a while. Every now and then he would laugh a little, like he was trying to lighten it up, but his eyes gave away how bothered he really was. Social media grabbed the clip in minutes. Fan pages cut it up, reposted it with captions like, "Ray J finally says what Brandy won't," and "Is there secret tension behind the scenes?" Some people dragged him immediately, saying he was messy for dragging his sister into drama she clearly didn't want. Others said they understood where he was coming from, that watching somebody you love be sidelined over and over could drive anyone to speak out. Timelines split right down the middle. Some were defending Beyoncé, some were defending Brandy, and some were just enjoying the chaos. Underneath all that noise, a quieter conversation started. Fans pulled out old videos from the tour. They slowed down backstage clips, pausing when Beyoncé walked past certain doors. They zoomed into photos where Beyoncé stood in the center with dancers, Monica at her side, Kelly glowing, but no sign of Brandy anywhere, even though it was supposed to be her night too. People started asking why. Was Brandy just not there yet? Did she choose not to be in the pictures? Or was there something else going on, something unspoken that everyone pretended not to see? Then someone brought up that one clip from a show where Brandy was heading toward the stage in a robe, hair set, mic in hand. In the background, you could make out Beyoncé and her team moving toward the opposite hallway. At the last second, the singer glanced down the corridor, turned her head away, and slipped behind a curtain. It could have been nothing. It could have been timing. But in the context of Ray J's rant, people started seeing it as proof. Comments filled with lines like, "That turn was too sharp to be an accident," and "This feels intentional." Through all of this, Brandy stayed silent. No interviews, no posts, no shady captions. During the shows, she smiled, hugged fans, praised Monica, thanked the audience for supporting them after so many years. If you only saw her on stage, you would never guess her name was trending because of some alleged backstage tension. Insiders said she was annoyed that Ray J opened his mouth at all, that she didn't want her tour overshadowed by speculation about who did or didn't say hello in a hallway. But publicly, she held the same poised smile she had perfected over decades. Things got messier when people started digging into old clips and interviews. That's when the late 90s whispers crawled back out. Some users resurfaced interviews where people joked about Jay-Z visiting the set of Brandy's show, about them talking more than fans realized, about an energy between them that never quite got addressed directly. Nobody had concrete proof, just memories, rumors, and vibes. Still, in the world of online commentary, that was enough. Editors stitched together Ray J's new rant, grainy old footage from the 90s, and recent tour clips into long videos with dramatic music and titles about unfinished business. One particular commentary video went viral. In it, the host played Ray J's live, then paused and said, "This doesn't come from nowhere." They walked through the alleged history, emphasizing again and again that they were talking about claims, not confirmed facts. They pointed out how rare it is for Beyoncé to be caught slipping in terms of public optics. If she didn't want to be seen as snubbing someone, her team knew exactly how to fix that with one simple picture. So why, they asked, had that picture never happened, even after multiple chances? In the middle of all this, fans of both women felt torn. Some of Brandy's supporters felt like this was just another example of her being pushed aside while others got the spotlight. They said it had been happening since forever, that she built the kind of R&B catalog others studied, yet somehow her name wasn't treated with the same weight. On the other side, Beyoncé's fans reminded everyone that she didn't owe anybody a photo, that she might have her own boundaries or reasons for keeping some distance, and that not every private decision is a public slight. At the heart of it all was Ray J, the one person who decided to say out loud what everyone else only speculated about in group chats and comment sections. Some called him a troublemaker who couldn't stand to be out of the spotlight. Others saw a little brother who had watched his sister get dismissed too many times and finally snapped. Whether people agreed with him or not, they couldn't deny the impact. One shaky livestream had managed to reignite years of quiet tension, drag old rumors back into circulation, and turn a celebratory tour into the latest centerpiece of online debate. At first, the people inside Brandy's circle tried to ignore the noise. They had lived through headlines, scandals, breakups, and every kind of rumor the industry could throw at them. A random live from Ray J was nothing new. One of Brandy's closest friends allegedly told a blogger that she rolled her eyes when she first heard about the rant and said she wasn't going to let her brother's feelings derail a tour she had waited years to do. But the internet does not care who wants peace. Once the clip started catching fire, it was like watching a match hit dry paper. Everything went up at once. Commentary channels jumped in like they had been waiting for this storyline. One host suggested that Ray J's little speech wasn't as spontaneous as it looked, that maybe he felt sidelined by the tour success and wanted to pull attention back onto himself. Another pointed out the timing, saying it was interesting that his outburst happened right after a show where Beyoncé had been spotted laughing with Monica backstage, but left before Brandy walked down the hallway. The host repeated several times that everything was alleged and based on public clips and fan accounts, but the message still landed. Viewers started to wonder if there was something calculated underneath his emotional appeal. Inside the fan spaces, people began connecting their own dots. One person claimed they had been at a show where Brandy's dressing room was a few doors down from the area where the guests entered. They said security tightened as soon as Beyoncé's team came through, and that staff shifted around like they were clearing a path. This person insisted they never saw the two women cross paths. Another fan said they overheard a crew member joke that, "We keep them on opposite sides so the internet doesn't lose its mind." There was no way to know how true any of these stories were, but in the middle of a growing storm, details like that felt believable enough. Then came the resurfaced clips from the Boy Is Mine tour dates where other big names pulled up. Videos of Rihanna hugging Brandy, laughing with Monica, taking pictures with the dancers went viral all over again. An old clip of the former First Lady smiling and waving from her seat as the crowd lost its mind was reposted with captions about how respect looks different when there is no past tension. People started comparing how those guests moved compared to how Beyoncé seemed to move, at least in the limited glimpses fans had captured. Small differences were suddenly treated like clues in a mystery. Behind closed doors, the situation was said to be causing friction within Brandy's own family. One relative allegedly felt that Ray J had crossed a line by publicly bringing up names that were bigger than them, especially without clearing it first. Another defended him, saying he only voiced what everyone whispered in private. They argued about whether loyalty meant keeping quiet to protect someone's career or speaking up to protect someone's feelings. Brandy, according to a person close to her, tried to shut the entire conversation down, telling everyone that she didn't have the energy for an old rumor to overshadow her hard work. While that was happening, Beyoncé's side stayed completely silent. No likes, no unlikes, no sudden quotes. Her page stayed focused on tour looks, family moments, and her usual carefully curated glimpses. That silence became its own storyline. Some fans said the quiet was a sign she didn't see the mess as worth addressing. Others claimed it proved there was something she didn't want to revisit. A few people pointed out that she had weathered far bigger storms without blinking, so there was no way she would break pattern over a single rant from another artist's sibling. A new layer was added when old interviews with Kelly resurfaced. In one clip, she teased Brandy about being a bit extra back in the day, asking a lot of questions, commenting on her skin tone after a trip, laughing about how young and clueless they all were. Back when that interview first aired, it came across as playful. In the middle of this new debate, though, people watched it differently. Some saw it as harmless nostalgia. Others felt a hint of old tension, like there had always been tiny cracks under the surface between Brandy and the Destiny's Child camp. People dug deeper and found those old whispers about Brandy allegedly telling Kelly she would shine brighter if she separated herself a little from Beyoncé and their shared management. Again, nothing was confirmed. It was all retellings from blogs and secondhand accounts. Still, once those stories resurfaced, it became easier for people to believe that Beyoncé might have quietly drawn a line. If she felt her best friend had once been pushed to turn against her, and if she believed Brandy had played a role, it would explain a lot about why any interaction now stayed distant and professional at best. Through all the speculation, Ray J tried to stand his ground, at least according to the clips that kept circulating. In one video, he doubled down but softened his tone. He said he meant no disrespect, that he loved both artists, that he just wanted his sister to get the same level of respect he felt she deserved. His eyes darted away from the camera when he mentioned how many years Brandy had been in the game, how she had to fight to be taken seriously again after every misstep, while others were allowed to float above criticism. There was both pride and old hurt in his voice, the kind that doesn't come from one tour, but from an entire career's worth of comparisons. Meanwhile, the Boy Is Mine tour rolled on. New cities, new crowds, new sold-out nights. From the audience's point of view, nothing had changed. Brandy still floated across the stage, Monica still commanded the mic, and fans still sang every word like it was the late 90s all over again. Yet after Ray J's comments, even simple fan videos felt different. Every backstage glimpse was watched like security footage. Every angle where a guest might be standing turned into a freeze frame. People weren't just enjoying the performances anymore. They were hunting for signs. Then, as if the storm needed more fuel, screenshots surfaced of Brandy's account allegedly leaving comments under a post connected to Beyoncé. The words hinted at someone feeling copied and sidelined, someone who believed their style had been borrowed without acknowledgement. The comments disappeared quickly, and soon after, a statement went up saying the account had been hacked. Fans split again. Some believed it, pointing to how often public figures get targeted online. Others squinted at the timing, wondering why such specific, emotionally charged words would appear by accident on the same day her brother was calling out the same person. The whole situation had turned into something much bigger than one late night live. It was no longer just about who took a picture with who. It became a reflection of years of quiet comparison, of who gets labeled a legend and who gets treated like an afterthought, of how past connections can haunt current careers. It turned into a question about how long grudges can live in an industry where everyone pretends everything is fine, at least as long as the cameras are rolling and the
lights are on. Behind the scenes, the tension started to feel less like gossip and more like a quiet family crisis that kept spilling into public view. One person close to the situation allegedly said that Brandy's team had to hold an emergency meeting, not about the tour production, but about how to handle the wave of stories that Ray J had accidentally kicked up. They weren't just worrying about headlines, they were worried about how the narrative could swallow the work she was doing on stage. She had spent months building this tour as a celebration, a reminder of why people fell in love with her voice in the first place. Now, suddenly, every interview request was about who did or didn't walk past a dressing room door. According to one insider, there was a moment in the green room after one of the shows when Brandy finally snapped at her brother. It wasn't loud, it wasn't messy, but it cut deep. People claim she looked him straight in the eye and asked why he always chose the loudest possible way to show love. She allegedly told him that every time she started to rebuild something, he found a way to drag old stories back into the spotlight, stories she had carefully tried to outgrow. Ray J, in typical little brother fashion, is said to have defended himself, insisting that he was tired of watching her be treated like a side note while everyone pretended not to see it. "You call it love," she supposedly told him, "but it feels like sabotage." those words, if they were really said, hit home for a lot of fans who heard about the exchange through whispers and secondhand posts. They understood that mix of gratitude and frustration, that strange feeling when the person who defends you the hardest also creates the loudest chaos around your name. People began to look at the situation not just as celebrity drama, but as a familiar pattern in complicated families. On the other side, there were whispers about what might be happening in Beyoncé's camp. Nothing public, of course, just quiet talk that some of her people were annoyed that her name had been thrown into yet another narrative she had not signed up for. One source claimed that she had known about the old rumors since long before the internet got a hold of them, and had made a decision years ago to keep a polite distance from anything that might drag those stories back into circulation. Whether or not that was true, it gave fans an easy explanation. She wasn't snubbing, she was protecting her peace. Fans who believed that version of events argued that it wasn't hard to see why she might be cautious. They pointed out that every time she appears in a photo with someone who has even the smallest bit of history connected to her personal life, the internet explodes into think pieces and theory threads. From that angle, her absence from pictures with Brandy felt less like shade and more like a calculated move to avoid feeding the rumor machine. But even those supporters had to admit that the pattern, when laid out side by side the way commentary channels were doing, looked suspicious to people on the outside. Then came another twist. A blog posted what they claimed was a conversation with a crew member who had worked at one of the venues. According to this unnamed worker, there was one night when both women were scheduled to use the same hallway at different times, and security made a very clear decision to shift the timing so they wouldn't collide. The worker said it wasn't framed as a fight or anything dramatic, just a quiet directive from higher up to keep the movement clean. Still, that one alleged detail set off another wave of speculation. If there was no issue at all, people asked, why would anyone bother rearranging routes? In the middle of the online mess, Kelly's name got dragged in more than anyone expected. Old photos of her hugging Brandy, laughing with her at events, resurfaced with captions wondering how she felt being in the middle of this silent coldness. Some fans claim that she had always seen both women as sisters in different ways, and that this entire situation probably weighed on her more than anyone else. A few theories even suggested that she might be the only person who could truly bridge the gap, offering the only path to a genuine, private conversation that would never be recorded or posted. But then, another layer was added to the story. Someone reposted an old clip where Kelly talked about Brandy pulling her aside back in the day, giving advice about stepping into her own power, not always being seen as standing in someone else's shadow. At the time, that clip had been praised as women supporting women. Now, in this new climate, people started twisting it into something else. They claimed that advice had been part of what convinced Beyoncé to create a little emotional distance, especially if those words had been retold to her in a slightly different way. Suddenly, Kelly went from the potential peacemaker to the alleged quiet link in a chain of misunderstandings. Ray J watched all of this unfold in real time, according to those who followed his every post. There were moments where he looked like he wanted to walk his words back, adding softer comments about how much he respected both artists. Then there were moments where he seemed to double down, liking shady tweets, laughing at certain jokes, leaning into the idea that he had cracked open something the industry had long tried to seal shut. That push and pull made him look even more chaotic to some viewers, but to others it just made him human, someone reacting in the moment without a media coach in his ear. Fans of Brandy started opening up about how they had felt for years. They talked about how painful it was to see their favorite treated like a warm, nostalgic memory instead of the powerhouse she still is. They wrote long posts about her vocals, her influence, her melodies, the way current artists borrowed from her runs and arrangements. Mixed into those tributes, though, was a quiet resentment toward how easily she seemed to be sidelined in big cultural moments. For those fans, Ray J's rant felt like a messy, imperfect cry that still carries some truth about the way the industry picks favorites and leaves others in the corner. Beyoncé's fans, meanwhile, pushed back hard. They reminded everyone of how carefully she protects her privacy and how rarely she entertains negative narratives. They argued that she had the right to choose who she interacted with, and that one person's disappointment over a missing photo did not mean she was cruel. They pointed to her history of supporting other artists, lifting them up on stage, honoring icons at award shows. For them, the idea that she would be hating another singer over decade-old rumors didn't line up with the woman they felt they knew from her work and her rare public statements. It didn't help that stan wars between the two fan bases had a long, tangled history. Anytime Brandy received praise, there would always be someone who tried to measure her against Beyoncé, and vice versa. This situation became a fresh field for that same tired battle. Streams were compared, ticket sales were dissected, chart positions from the 90s were dragged into debates as if they could somehow solve the question of who owed who a smile backstage. The truth was, both women had earned their space in music history, but the internet thrives on ranking and rivalry, not quiet respect. As the debate got louder, some voices tried to calm things down. A few commentators reminded everyone that none of the people at the center of the story had actually confirmed any of these detailed accusations. No long statements, no angry interviews, no direct callouts. Everything was built on a scattered mix of live streams, old footage, rumored encounters, and emotional interpretations. They warned that fans might be building entire castles out of smoke, convincing themselves there was a raging fire where there
might only be unresolved awkwardness and old wounds no one had found the courage to fully talk through. Still, one thing felt unshakable. Ray J's late-night words had exposed more than just possible tension between two famous singers. They had highlighted how fragile respect can feel in an industry where image is everything. They had showed how a single shaky video shot from the back of a car could drag old whispers into the spotlight and force millions of strangers to choose sides in a story where none of them knew the full truth. And they had laid bare the fact that sometimes the messiest part of any situation is not the rumor itself, but how the people around it choose to react. Somewhere in the middle of all the noise, a new city on the tour calendar started trending for a different reason. Fans noticed that both Brandy and Beyoncé were rumored to be in the same building again, this time with even more cameras, more security, and even more eyes looking for the slightest sign of interaction. Outside the arena, people lined up hours early, not just to sing along to the classics, but to see if tonight would finally be the night the silent distance cracked. Commentary pages teased it all day, hinting that this show could end up being the most talked about stop yet. Backstage, the energy felt different. According to one person who claimed to be working wardrobe, there was a strange mix of excitement and tension in the air, like everyone could feel that something unscripted might happen. Brandy was said to be quieter than usual, locked in her usual warm-ups, but with a hint of distraction in her eyes when someone mentioned the guest list. Ray J, on the other hand, reportedly bounced between rooms, trying to act normal while also clearly watching his phone, refreshing his feeds to see how the conversation outside the building was evolving. Allegedly, there was a brief conversation between Brandy and her team before she went on stage. One of them supposedly suggested that if she did run into Beyoncé in a hallway, she should smile, offer a simple hello, and keep it moving. Nothing dramatic, nothing forced, just a brief acknowledgement that adults can exist in the same space without turning it into a headline. Brandy, if the story is to be believed, shook her head and said softly, "I don't want anything to feel like a performance." She didn't mean the music, she meant the moment. She didn't want a quick handshake baked for the cameras and served as proof that everything was fine. On the other side of the arena, there were whispers that Beyoncé's team had their own quiet instructions. A staff member alleged that the goal was to enjoy the night, support the performers they came to see, and avoid anything that could be misread or twisted, especially with the online conversation already boiling over. It wasn't about disrespect, according to this version of events. It was about not giving the rumor mill one more inch of material to chew on. For some, that sounded reasonable. For others, it sounded like yet another way of keeping a wall intact. During the show, none of that backstage strategy was visible. From the stands, all people saw was magic. Brandy seemed to pour every bit of herself into the songs, hitting notes that made the whole crowd scream in unison. Monica stepped onto the stage like it was built for her alone, commanding the moment with that effortless authority she's carried for decades. Phones lit up the arena like stars, capturing every run, every harmony, every shared glance between the two women headlining the night. If you didn't know about the storm outside, it just looked like a celebration. But the real drama, at least according to those who were watching closely, played out in the few minutes after the show ended. Word spread quickly that Beyoncé had been spotted in one of the private suites, clapping and smiling as the final songs rang out. As soon as the lights went up, phones shot up too, hoping to catch a glimpse of her leaving. Down below, Brandy walked off stage and into the narrow maze of hallways that led toward her dressing room. Somewhere in between those paths, the two women were briefly set on a collision course. One crew member later told a blogger that there was a moment, just a heartbeat long, when they actually saw both women step into the same main corridor. Brandy came from one end, still in her stage robe, sweat shining on her forehead, adrenaline buzzing through her veins. Beyoncé allegedly emerged from a side door with a small group around her, face relaxed, still glowing from the high of watching close friends perform. For that 1 second, it looked like they were finally going to cross directly in front of each other. The air, according to the person who claimed to witness it, felt so heavy that even the security guards seemed to hold their breath. Then, just as quickly as it lined up, the moment slipped away. Someone from Beyoncé's side quietly touched her arm and nodded toward a side staircase. She turned, graceful and unbothered, and headed that way without breaking stride. Brandy, focused and mid-conversation with someone from her band, kept walking straight ahead, never glancing over, never pausing. To anyone not looking for a story, it was nothing more than two people moving through a busy hallway. To those who had been following the saga, it felt like a live illustration of everything that had been discussed for weeks. When word of that near passing hit the internet, reactions were instant. Some fans claimed it proved that both women wanted to avoid any staged or awkward moment, choosing their own paths instead of being forced into an encounter. Others argued that it showed how deep the distance really was, that even a simple nod or quiet greeting was too risky in the current climate. In reality, nobody knew what thoughts were running through either woman's mind in those seconds. All anyone had were blurry accounts and third-hand descriptions, stretched into full interpretations by people eager to assign motive. Meanwhile, Ray J's perspective continued to be the loudest voice actually speaking on the situation, even if no new lives were posted. Old clips of him talking about loyalty, protection, and family resurfaced, layered over images of his sister on stage. Some viewers felt a pang of sympathy, imagining how it must feel to watch someone you love get treated in ways that feel disrespectful, whether or not that was truly the intention.
Others rolled their eyes, insisting that he had created more damage than defense, and that whatever tension existed between these artists would have stayed manageable if he hadn't poured gasoline on it. As more days passed and no official statements came from anyone directly involved, a new mood started to creep into the conversation. The wildest theories slowly lost steam, and a quieter, more reflective tone took their place. People started asking different questions. Instead of just asking who snubbed who, some viewers began to wonder why the public is so hungry to see powerful women in conflict in the first place, why a missing picture feels more exciting than a flawless performance, why old whispers about who might have talked to who decades ago still have so much power over how people see them in the present. There were fans who admitted that they had projected their own feelings onto the story, fans who had sisters they felt protective over, fans who had friends that grew apart quietly, fans who knew the pain of being in the same room as someone they weren't ready to confront. Through that lens, the alleged distance between Brandy and Beyoncé didn't just look like petty shade. It looked like something more human and complicated, layered with old misunderstandings, ego, pride, and the basic human instinct to avoid pain, even when it shows up dressed like nostalgia. At the same time, others refused to let go of the more dramatic angle. They pointed to the way the
Industry often rewrites stories, positioning certain artists as flawless, while others are allowed to carry the weight of every rumor, misstep, or misquote forever. For those people, the idea that Brandy might be quietly paying the price for ancient gossip in industry politics felt unfair. They argued that even if there was a reason for the distance, there had to be a way forward that didn't involve endless sidestepping and silent tension. In the end, what remained wasn't a clear answer, but a collection of moments, claims, and reactions that said as much about the audience as they did about the artists. Ray J's late-night rant, the alleged hallway shuffle, the old interviews, the hacked comments, the fans arguing in comment sections long after the lives ended, it all combined into one messy, fascinating snapshot of how modern fame works. Nothing stays quiet for long. Every glance becomes evidence. Every silence becomes an invitation for people to write their own endings. Whether there was ever a real, deep divide between Brandy and Beyoncé, or whether it was just a chain of misunderstandings and calculated boundaries, may never be officially confirmed. The people who know the full story are keeping it where it has always lived, behind closed doors, away from timelines, inside conversations that will never be recorded. What the public is left with are shadows on the wall, voices telling conflicting versions, and the choice to either keep pushing for more drama or accept that some stories will always stay partly hidden, no matter how many times someone hits the live button and decides they are finally ready to talk. So now that we've walked through all of this, it's important to say it clearly one more time. None of us were in those rooms. We didn't stand in those hallways. We didn't sit in on those private talks, and we definitely don't know what was actually said behind closed doors. What we do have are Ray J's emotional words, old clips, fan stories, and years of little moments that people have stitched together into one messy, interesting narrative. This is commentary on what's being said online, not a verdict on anybody's real-life character. Maybe this is deep, decades-old tension. Maybe it's just careful boundaries and a choice to avoid feeding chaos. Maybe it's something in between that only they fully understand. Whatever the truth is, Brandy's voice, Beyoncé's legacy, and the way fans ride for both of them are all real, and you can feel that in every performance, every lyric, every packed arena. The rest lives in that gray area where celebrity, pride, family, and rumor all blur together. If you're still here listening, I want to know what you think. Do you feel like Ray J crossed a line by speaking out, or was he saying what a lot of people already felt but were too scared to say out loud? Do you believe there's real tension, or is the internet forcing a story onto two women who are just trying to protect their peace and their families? Drop your take in the comments and keep it respectful, because at the end of the day, these are real people, not just characters in a show. Make sure you hit like if you enjoyed the breakdown, subscribe if you want more deep dives into the stories everyone's whispering about, and turn on the notifications so you don't miss the next chapter of this wild world of celebrity culture.